What do you do when you are hitting a bottom, when the worst has happened and you are, as Kanye would say, in a sunken place? What's the first thing someone can do? Is it what we just talked about? And then how do you kind of go from there? Because I do want to get into the 5 types of wealth. And by the way, friends, Sahil wrote this really great book. It's called The 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. And we are going to go through the 5 types, which is time, social, mental, physical, and financial. And so I kind of would love a step-by-step for somebody.
Yeah. There's this beautiful quote, probably one of my favorite quotes that I come back to over and over again in my own life. It is from Rumi, the ancient poet. And he wrote, "The wound is where the light enters you. The wound is where the light enters you." And it's a reminder that during those periods of darkness, that depth, that feeling of being completely stuck, the destruction that you've encountered, that is actually the point where the seeds of your eventual rebirth are being planted. They're being sown. But you have to allow them to enter you. You have to actually experience that. And it ties.
Meaning what? Like, don't numb out those painful feelings.
Open up to them. Open up to understanding that life follows this natural cycle. And in ancient Indian cultures, it's called Kala Chakra, the idea that life follows this natural cycle of creation, destruction, and then rebirth. And if you reflect on your own life, you can kind of see that actually, that your life has followed these periods where you've had these periods of growth and beauty and incredible wins and success. And they're almost inevitably followed by these seasons of struggle. There's something that comes that throws chaos into your life. It could be a divorce, a loss of a family member, some point of grief, a job loss, whatever it is. That period of destruction follows. But those periods of destruction are followed by your eventual rebirth. But during that period of destruction, you have to open yourself up to the world. You can't hide from it. You can't try to numb it. You actually have to experience the fullness of that darkness because it is a natural part of the cycle that you're going through.
Can't just sweep it under the rug.
Exactly. And I did, look, I tried to do that.
I
And
think we
it
all
got me
do.
closer and closer to a very dark place and an edge. In my own journey, as you said, I chased all of the definitions of success that the world had handed to me. And a lot of it was grounded in an insecurity that I felt, in a feeling that I didn't feel like I was enough and I wasn't impressive to myself. And what you do is you go try to chase all of the affirmations that you can get from other people. So get enough other people to think you're impressive. And then one day you think you'll wake up and feel impressive to yourself. And unfortunately, what you learn is that you can't have an external solution to an internal problem. And I did that by chasing the traditional cultural definition of success, which is making money. And at every step, when I would get a promotion or when I would make more money, I would think I was going to wake up and feel this great feeling of happiness. And I wouldn't. I would get the kind of momentary blip, and then it would just reset to this feeling of dread that I wasn't doing enough. But unfortunately, along that whole path, while I was winning this one game, all of these other areas of my life had started to show cracks and started to suffer. Most importantly, my relationships. With my parents, I was never seeing them. We lived 3,000 miles away. My sister and my relationship had really ground to a halt. My wife and I at the time were struggling to conceive for about 2 years, and that was creating a burden and a strain that was a real challenge, and one where I was not in a mental or physical place showing up to help shoulder that burden in the way that I should have been. Um, and physically, I was drinking 6, 7 nights a week. I mean, the impact that that has on your life, on your mental and physical health is enormous. And so from the outside looking in, I was winning the game. And I started to have this sensation that if that was what winning felt like, I had to be playing the wrong game. And that realization was the turning point for me. And it was the turning point that led to the outflow of this book eventually, was the realization. Yeah.
Well, how did you get to that realization without some extreme scenario? Because normally it takes a brain tumor, pancreas cancer, divorce, something to get you to be shaken up to see that. What got you to the place where you realized this model of winning isn't winning.
I had a single conversation with an old friend in May of 2021 that completely changed my life. I went out for a drink and we sat down and he asked how I was doing. And I said that it had started to get tough being so far away from my parents who were on the East Coast. They're getting older, closest people in the world to me, and I wasn't seeing them. He asked how old they were. And I said mid 60s. And he asked how often I saw them. And I said about once a year. And he just looked at me and said, okay, so you're going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. And I just remember feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I mean, the idea that the amount of time you have left with the people you care most about in the world is that finite and countable, that you can place it onto a few hands, it just shook me to my core. And in that moment, I realized that if we didn't make a change, we were going to end up somewhere where we didn't want to be. So the next day, I told my wife that I thought we should consider a move. And within 45 days, I had left my job on the West Coast. We had sold our house in California and moved 3,000 miles to live closer to both sets of parents. And that one decision and the ripple effect of that one decision changed our entire lives. Within 2 weeks of getting to the East Coast, we found out that my wife was pregnant. Excuse me.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm not a particularly religious person, but after 2 years of struggling to conceive and experiencing that right after making this big change, it was one of those moments in life when you feel like God winked at you. Like when things come into alignment, everything falls into place as it should. And that was really the spark that brought me back to life in some ways.
Thanks for sharing that. I think I had a dinner with an executive once, and he told me the same thing. He did the math. Somebody had approached him. He lived, I think, in the Philippines. And he was like, how often do you see your mom? And he's like, oh, once a year. Did the same math. He's like, so you got about 15, 20 more visits with her. And then he went down to the hours. So you only see her for a couple of hours. Okay, so then the hours was even more shocking. And I remember that. And at that point, I was already a hoarder with my parents. I would keep them as much as I could in California with me. And they'd come out for a week and they'd stay for 6 months. And then I'd cry when they would leave and then they would come back. But I feel like I've always gotten to know how precious that is because my dad almost died on the regular. So I knew I had to keep them close. But I think it's a really great reminder for everybody that they're not always going to be there. And we take it for granted because we do get into that cycle of just success and winning and all of that. I can imagine the peace that your wife had, that you had when you guys moved and you made a decision to go after your internal happiness. And it's no wonder that she got pregnant. I wonder what that journey was like for you in terms of kind of reinventing, because you had left your job. And what was that like? Was that tough?
There was a readjustment period to not having the very clear, simple sort of cocktail party version of what do you do when people ask you.
I remember that when I left too. It's the worst. What do you do? I'm like, I don't know, a lot.
Yeah, and you
A
say like
lot.
10 things in a word salad and people kind of look at you like, okay, so you just said nothing. And it's funny. I mean, like society really values the clean definition, the like one-liner that you can say. And one of the biggest struggles when you are marching down a very different path is that there is this period of loneliness where you have sort of left the confines of the prior environment. You no longer speak the same language as the people that you previously thought of as close friends. You have
Because
changed.
you also know more. You've gone to another level. I remember, yes.
Yeah, I mean, your vision, your goals, the literal language you speak is different, and you've left, but you have yet to attract the new people to the new version of who you are. And the thing that kept coming into my mind during that period of loneliness was this reminder that I kept hearing and saying to myself that this is the cost of entry for the transformation that I want to go through. This is the growth and the change that I asked for. And this is the cost of entry that I have to pay, the tax that I have to pay for that growth and for that change.
You were
And
aware in those moments of that?
I have felt that at a few different phases in my life. You know, my whole childhood, I was sort of at this collision of two separate worlds. I come from a mixed race background. My mom is Indian. My father is white Jewish from the Bronx, New York. My mom was born and raised in India. When my dad wanted to marry my mom, his father was not accepting of it and made him choose between her and his family. And my dad walked out the door and never saw his family again. To this day, I never met my dad's parents. He has 3 siblings I never met. I have first cousins that I've never met. And the legacy of that was, I guess, 2 things. One, it was a legacy of love because my parents chose love above the common convention of the path they were handed. And 2, there was just this feeling that I wasn't ever quite sure exactly where I fit in. Like I wasn't sure if I was kind of the more nerdy kid or the like athlete jock. I wasn't sure, if I was supposed to be the like tough guy or if I was the like sort of smart, thoughtful, sensitive one. Like I never really could figure out who I was, like what was my real identity. And so I kept kind of like trying to grab at different things all along the journey. And that is very lonely because as a kid, your only thing you really care about is trying to fit in. You just want to know where you fit in the world. And it feels very lonely if you don't have that alignment. And it's kind of this funny paradox of life that like as a kid, you do not want to stand out. But as an adult, the thing that makes you special is when you stand out and you get celebrated for it. And so I just feel like my whole life I sort of wrestled with this internal, external reality of loneliness and trying to find my people that were really attracted to the real version of who I was, not the facade that I maybe would have created at different points in time.
If you guys like what you just saw, please hit subscribe for more clips and full episodes. Healing is possible, friends, and it happens here. Hey, Heal Squad, we have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.